tomorrow. Visit us at Jubilee Street, Grenville, Lucas Street, St. George, or our brand new modern spaces at Seaton Brown Street, Grenville and Grand Anse. Call us on 442-8602 or stop by one of our branches at Grenville Cooperative Credit Union. We're not just securing your finances, we're investing in your future. Let's grow, dream, and succeed together. The Grenville Cooperative Credit Union, the credit union of Grenville, building a brighter future for you, for us, for Grenada.
Thank you and pleasant morning and welcome to the program, The Conversation with the RGPF. I do trust that everyone thus far is having a wonderful Wednesday morning. And of course, it's always a good place to be here in Studios Real 91.9 and 91.5 to continue with the program, The Conversation with the RGPF. And I'm your host for this morning, Constable 26 Callis, attached to the Community Relations Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force. And in studios with me is no other person than my humble servant. Normally goes by Jess, whatever. But in all due capacity, she's known as Woman Sergeant 85 Jessel Grant. And I'm going to take this opportunity to welcome her to the program this morning, The Conversation with the RGPF, along with all of those who are joining us on live stream on Facebook and on YouTube. Pleasant morning to you, and invite someone to join us this morning on The Conversation with the RGPF. So, pleasant morning to you, Woman Sergeant Grant, and how are you?
Pleasant morning to you, Callis, and all of the wonderful listeners of Real FM. I'm doing good, thanks. Happy to be in the land of the living where I can speak with you and you're not talking about me.
Wonderful. I know we would have just gone past a couple of days ago. We had celebrated Women's International Day, and you being a woman, I trust that you had a splendid day on that day. And to all the other women who were out there, you too would have enjoyed. So in the light of that, and timely, just prior to that, we had a session discussing the ever-growing role of women in policing, and there it is. Just there, a couple of days after we had, us to celebrate Women's Day. So I do trust you had a wonderful day celebrating Women's Day. And all the other women out there within the diaspora and within the Eastern Caribbean, I do trust that you had a wonderful day. So as we go through the program this morning, The Conversation with the RGPF, what is on the discussion table for us this morning, Sergeant Grant?
Kelly, you always putting me on the spot, but this morning we'll dive a little into the whole aspect of domestic violence. I know some of my listeners probably saying what else or what more can be said. And it is a topic, I love to call it the monster that is really plaguing our society. And oftentimes we need to remind persons that domestic violence is among us. What are their rights, what they can do in situations of domestic violence, whether they are the victim or a loved one to the victim, or even just a bypasser or an observer. And if we all have that understanding as to the different positions or things to do in situations of that nature, obviously we would have a reduction, and our community would be safer. So we'll be digging a little deeper into domestic violence. You know, oftentimes, Kalis, when we go to respond to in situations of domestic violence, persons will say, I didn't call the police, whether the victim herself or himself. I didn't call the police shouldn't be here. But the law is clear as to police duty and function at the scene or in responding to the whole aspect of domestic violence.
Right. So as we go into that aspect of domestic violence for this morning's topic on the conversation with the RGPF, how serious would you say domestic violence is trending in Grenada presently, based on your experience in having to cover or deal with these situations based on your years of experience as a police officer?
It is in our face, and hence the reason why I call it a monster. I also recall when I was doing my first degree with UE, domestic violence has always been a topic that when I have the opportunity to do researches or do any assignments that I look at, because I remember clearly well in 2012, when we had that spike in our homicide rate, the large majority of those was stemmed from domestic violence, right? And hence I say it is. Now, as comparing just the Eastern Division and looking at community relation as just a small unit that operates, quote unquote, within the ambit of 824, you would realize that the calls are coming into our department. Then you have SVU, the Special Victims Unit. They themselves are getting their own quota. Then you have regular policing, and even that of RRU. You are seeing that they have to respond to situations of domestic violence. And we are not excluding the schools. We are not excluding the health centers. They have or are being recipients of those complaints, because there are times when the females, in most instances, would go to seek medical attention, and you realize that the injury that was sustained was as a result of domestic violence. So how serious? It is serious. It is plaguing our society. It is affecting our children. And as tourism say, it is all of us business. Same so is domestic violence. It is all of us business, whether you are the victim, the perpetrator, or the loved one of either of the parties. You have a part to play, and we want you to speak up. Do not stay silent.
I've listened to a program some time back, and we called the person that got injured a victim, yeah. But the presenter was saying they would have passed the stage of being a victim. They are now a survivor, you know, because going through that process of domestic violence and come out not being dead, as we say, you know, you are now termed to be a survivor, and having to take all the process going through, you know. I want to encourage persons, you know, especially a lot of our females, you know, you mentioned that of the medical attention that they would get, and some of them just settle for just going to the doctor, and thereafter they close the door. The police is no longer going to get involved. The abuser and I had a conversation, and he said he's going to work things out differently. He's not going to do things in that way anymore. But it's so important for you as the victim or the survivor of domestic violence to understand that there are some levels of rights that you have and that you should take the better approach to be able to safeguard yourself.
Well, before we look into the whole aspect of the rights, let us just look at in 2005, when we looked at the domestic violence laws, there were some terms that has changed when the law was revised in 2010. So, for example, we all know, and the average person know, a restraining order. Now, under the new act, it is a protection order. So, I use a scenario to say, while yes, it is okay and it is good to know what the words are or who fits or the activities that fit within the whole aspect of domestic violence, it is the bigger picture is, am I ready going through the whole aspect of domestic violence? Because we have seen through our tenure that a lot of persons, regardless to the professional stature, regardless to their career, and that they are victims. So whether you want to, I've been to a training where they said that the survivor is the one who, having gone through severe acts of domestic violence and didn't pass to the great beyond. So you call them the survivor. Then you would have the victim, the person, same person they're talking about. Then you have the applicant, who is also the victim. Then you have the respondent, you have the defendant, you have the abuser. So what in all of those terms is you as an individual being able to say what you are experiencing or what you are doing. So for example, many a times we speak about domestic violence, you would realize persons clamor more to the interpartner relationship type of domestic violence. Now, there are different forms of domestic violence, which is the physical, the hitting, the pushing, the biting. You have the verbal, which is the language, the name calling. You have the emotional, where you attack that person's emotional feelings. You still have psychological, that is the mental status. You have financial, and believe it or not, there are a lot of financial abuse taking place. It's just that parties do not understand where and how that abuse. Financial abuse can be criminal or civil. Then you have the big monster in the room, sexual. And some parties believe that how do I make a report against my significant other, whether it is my husband, my wife, my boyfriend, or my girlfriend, that he or she has sexually abused me? But the fact is, it do happen, because our laws say that husbands can rape wives and wives can rape their husbands. So if it goes for married couples, how much more does it apply to you as a single individual? But what I want my listeners to take home this morning is that domestic violence is real, and regardless to all of the terms, the names that are there, is to understand when you are facing that situation. One, also understand when you are perpetrating or causing or doing those acts that adds up to domestic violence, considering that domestic violence can have two ambits, which is the criminal aspect and the civil aspect. And obviously we need to ensure that we I'm tired seeing persons coming to us, and may I say, listeners, our male folks are coming in and complaining against a significant other for committing acts of domestic violence against them. And I want to take the opportunity to say to our male counterparts, keep it up, continue. Gone was the days when we say that you are a man, tough it out. Why you're crying? You shouldn't cry. You are a boy and you are CC. What happened to your emotional side? Because bear in mind, Carlos, I as a female, if you cut me or if you hit me too hard, my skin will swell. It may get light or change in color. If you cut me, you will get blood, red blood. And same so you being male, if the same thing is done to you, it's the same response. Based on how hard you get the lash, you would swell, you would have the coloration or the change in skin color. If you are cut, you would have blood. So let us get it within our system to understand that males do have issues and are victims of domestic violence.
One of the things, Sir Grant, that I believe that place men in this position is that we have this division between male and female. As you're growing up, you give the girls all the attention, all the dolls and all this, and as I already said, the boys, as they grow up, you want them to be tough and you don't show them that emotional side of it so that they can express their feeling. So they grow up to the point where, hey, listen, I have to be this hardcore man. No one can see me with tears coming off my eyes, or if I do want to share some tears, I have to go behind the closet, and cover the tears so nobody should see me. But over a period of time, having to understand the law and having to have such programs like the conversation with the RGPF and having to share as relates to domestic violence, I rightly believe that men are coming to the understanding that, of course, they too are victims of domestic violence, and as such, they are coming forward because you have the whole concept of the psychological abuse or the emotional and even some of the physical. But what tends to happen is that the females who are victims, they report it. The males, as you say, they suck it up because they were taught to stay quiet. And as a result of that, they become frustrated. They become depressed. And what you see happening, they tend now to get themselves more involved in further acts of violence, rather than trying to seek the help. But I must say that I have to congratulate so many of our men that come forward in today's society to be able to relate their experience and who are getting help through different agencies as relates to domestic violence.
And I fully concur and endorse all that you would have said, and would like to add to it that all of the effects that affects females also affects male. It's just that it has been proven, statistics is there to show, that females are the larger category of perpetrators of verbal abuse, and to some extent emotional and psychological, whereas male is a larger perpetrator or abuser of physical abuse. And there is no math or explanation in that. Madam calls her husband or her significant other in some derogatory names because his boys is out there. He feels hurt, insulted. It's either he responds there or when he gets home, he responds. That response, 90% or more of the time, is physical. So you want to embarrass me. I turn your little boy. And by the time those words are
completed,
it's because the hand is already connected to the female counterpart. I'm hearing our males saying, Officer, you're not aware as to the amount of lash my madam give me. What I want to say to this male, do not sit back and say the police is going to laugh at you and don't come forward. Because the Domestic Violence Act do not speak to a gender when it comes to who is the victim or the perpetrator. It says a person. That was one of the changes that was made when the 2005 laws was revised. It says a person. Therefore, a female committing acts of violence against her partner, he shouldn't sit back. And now, I'm not saying to him that you have to take her to court, but there should be some form of action, not just lodge it and leave it there. Because it seems and will appear that it was not dealt with, because she was not spoken to in light of her conduct. And before, we used to talk about the honeymoon period, or that cycle within the whole aspect of domestic violence. My experience with domestic violence and training would also tell you 90% plus times that female knows when her significant other will explode. She knows when the blow is coming, when the cuss off is coming, and she also knows when that love making time is coming. She also knows when the time when she will be treated with royalty, and she also knows the time is coming and when that time would be, when her body is going to lit a fire. And fire here does not mean in its literal sense, but the different forms of abuse that I alluded to. She feels that tension, that build up, and because he wants nothing to happen to him, he bribes her. She bribes him. Whoever the perpetrator be, they bribe the other one to get them to hush, so that nobody on the outside will know. Some of them, when they realize that the children start talking, and children nowadays is not like when we were growing up, where they definitely hush them out, afraid to speak of what they see. The children are speaking out because, one, they are taught to do so. Two, they are able to research and dig into their devices that provides them with information as to the necessary step or steps to be taken. The only downside to that is oftentimes we are aware that if we take the wrong step, it can lead us astray. And it is no exception to the whole aspect of domestic violence.
See, one of the things, Sergeant Grant, that I've seen, and I'm sure based on your experience and training, is that persons who go through the whole domestic violence issue and they do not tend to seek the intervention that is needed. And when we look at the cycle of violence, you realize without the proper intervention, that cycle continues. And it does not stay just minimal based on the first incident, but we may sweep the first incident under the carpet. And here it are, the cycle going back, as I said, the honeymoon phase, you know everything, what is going to happen. And here it is, the volcano erupt again because of some misjudgment or because of some conflict that you may have had, and the best way you think that you have to deal with it is physically, you know, or maybe verbally. And because of the lack of intervention, or because you as a victim fail to take the necessary course of action, then you realize that the structure of the family begins to deteriorate because of violence that is happening within the home.
And gone was the days when we could have hide it. Gone was the days when it just stays within the four corners of the house, because the children at schools are being educated and informed. They are dramatizing the situations and have to tell whether or not domestic violence has been perpetrated or committed. No, they are not innocent. They're not laid back. They know what to look for. They know what to do before and after. So the whole aspect of domestic violence is not just interpartner violence. Domestic violence speaks to us all. It speaks to us all. And as law enforcement, when we receive a call of domestic violence, as I indicated in previous sessions, that we must have a female accompanying the responding team. And I also remember that there was a time when it was said the time frame in which it have to be dealt with, whether or not a party who is experiencing the abuse, whether it's the male, the female, or some relative within the household or a child, is the one who call. Law enforcement does not have to use that benchmark, but the law covers law enforcement as to what their response mechanism should be in situations of that nature. When we have domestic violence being committed, what do we do? Especially when you are not the one who, especially when you are not the one who commits or is within that whole aspect. So I want to encourage persons to know not just their rights, but what is also the responsibility of the police when they receive information. And that's what is important here. When the police or law enforcement receives information as to a domestic violence situation, what should the police do? And you don't have to take it from me this morning. You can go and read it yourselves and have that understanding as to what are the duties, functions, responsibilities of the police, and whether or not the law says you have to wait on a party or a household member to give that information to the police.
See, there's so many times we have concerned citizens, as we say, quote unquote, who would have called and make that complaint that there is some act of domestic issue happening with the neighbor, and the police is expected to respond based on information. And the scenario may just be such and grand that the police got there, and in identifying themselves, maybe the victim, maybe the perpetrator, my spouse and I don't have no issue. You know, we're just having a conversation. But as you rightly said, the police has responsibilities and functions, you know, and being on the scene as the officer, you might just pick up sudden little cues that might just be happening. And so let's just be able to look at the police duties and responsibilities, the function when it comes to dealing with that of domestic violence.
Of course, the police on receipt of a domestic violence, regardless to how they obtain their information, need to be observant. And I would encourage my colleagues who are listening and tuned in this morning or will be viewing it thereafter to listen for the unspoken words. And that unspoken words is the facial expression and the body language of the party to whom you are speaking with, whether it's the perpetrator, the victim, or any other person within the household. You also have to look or listen, that unspoken word. You also have to listen to what they are saying, but that is not what they mean. So we have to be very observant and be an excellent listener. The law says that upon receipt of information in relation to a domestic violence situation, the police do not have to obtain a warrant to respond or come at your house. We do not need that. And that's the law. Don't ask me why not, and why so. That's what the law says. If you have an issue with it, take it to the right channel and contest it. That either the law be revised or it remain as is. So, even if the law says that the police do not need to have a warrant to enter or search your property, the law also says to the police, when you enter, what are your responsibilities, what you should do, and how you should respond. The law also tells the police that when you have those information, who do you contact? Who do you inform, and how to inform them? So when we come to the scene of a domestic violence situation, or you call to give information and we ask of you those questions, it's not because we want to get into your business. There is someone above the police. So for me, a sergeant, when I respond to a domestic situation, I have my inspector, I have the ASP, I have the superintendent, and you go up the chain until you reach the commissioner. And the commissioner the information doesn't sit there with the commissioner. The commissioner now sends that information on to the Ministry of Social Development. And that is what assists MOSD, which is the Ministry of Social Development, to create or implement training, program, and other initiatives, placement, financial support in lieu or in response to domestic violence. So when we ask, was there weapon used in the commission of the domestic violence? When we ask, was he or she under the influence of alcohol? What kind of weapon that was used? Was he saying anything when he was or she was committing the acts towards you? How frequent? And before you would have received the blow or blows, what was some of the signs? What happened? What was the build up to that situation? Where were the children? Were they exposed to it? Were they present? How did the children get to know? What are your children's response? What is the school saying in light of the behavior of your child or children having been exposed to domestic violence? And bear in mind that domestic violence is not just the physical, as I said earlier on. Just to use myself as an example, I grew up, at one stage in a single parent home, then I was within a nuclear settings, and then I got back into a single parent. And I've never seen, God make peace with her soul, a male or know of my mother being in any domestic situation physically. But I know of situations financially, I know of it emotionally, I know of it psychologically, and obviously I know of it verbally. And one may say, well, why she use herself? It's just to show that I understand the pain and the agony of domestic violence. So when I respond to the scene of a domestic violence situation and I look for the child or children within the household. And I advise Child Protection Authority to move these children. It's because I understand that there are times these children need someone to voice for them. Because being stuck between mommy and daddy, or mommy and stepdad, or daddy and stepmom, being stuck between there, it's like you don't want to go apart. You don't want to get anybody into further problems. So that child stay there and suck up and burn up, and we eventually end up losing them either again sexually, through substance abuse, school dropout, same bullying and delinquent behavior. So it's a whole chain effect. It's not just there. So when the police respond and the police take certain course of action, don't think it's because we hate you or we have something about you. It is just the instructions that the law gives to us to respond to, because it is all of us business. The next thing, when the police respond to the scene, it also states that in an emergency situation, based on the nature of harm or injury caused to either person, the police have that authority to move away the children in a place of safety, and also the adult in that situation. This can be a little ticklish with the adult.
I was just about to ask the question, how much of a challenge
Of
that
course.
may be?
Then oftentimes there are challenges with the adults. But there is always a B plan. She don't want to move as a victim. He don't want to move as a victim. The law say move the aggressor. Because while domestic violence is not an offense or a criminal offense, but the action between is criminal. And I have outlined the physical, the verbal, the sexual, some of the financial. They can be criminal, which give the police the authority to act. The only offense within the Domestic Violence Act is that of breach of a protection order. But by the time so the process of obtaining the protection order is civil. But when the magistrates give that instruction and says what's supposed to be done between the applicant and the respondent, and the respondent fails to comply with that instruction, he or she is now committing criminal breakdown. So in that situation, if he or she disobeys the magistrate, then it becomes a criminal offense. And these are things that person need to understand. So as I reach a little on the protection order, just to say, you're in a relationship with brother and sister, mother and children, and you don't really want the police in it, because you know what? We are one at the end of the day.
We say we want to save the embarrassment.
We want to save that John public embarrassment. So I'll apply for a protection order. It's very easy. You go to the court, you plead your cause through an affidavit. The magistrate believes, whether he or she believes your account on the affidavit, they can grant that order in ex parte, interim ex parte order, meaning that the respondent, be it male or female, does not know that you are before the court making certain requests based on incidents or actions or activities that was taken or occurred between both of you. The magistrate now, in his or her judgment, can say Tom Jones or John Public needs to be protected from that respondent or from that abuser. An abuser here does not speak to gender, be it male, man. It is either male or female, man or woman. And if the magistrate believes your account or your story that was placed in the affidavit, she or he can grant it ex parte. What ex parte means? The respondent or the person who you're complaining against has no knowledge and is not present based on what the information you lay. The magistrate believes your story or your account of all the incidents that take place and grant it. However, the law says that within no more than 21 days, the respondent should be before the court to justify or accept or deny the claim that was made on the affidavit. The sad reality is, whenever that document is served on the respondent, if one of the instruction or within the order, it says that you have to leave the premises, it normally says, do not enter the residence or the shared household. It also said, do not enter the place of employment of the applicant. So if that is scribed or any other instruction, you have to abide by it. So I'm hearing the male saying, officer, but what happened to my personal effect and my tools, and I need these? How do I get it? Because 21 days waiting is a long time and I have to survive. Where the magistrate was when I'm building my house, you do not lose ownership of your house, or whether it is owned or rented. And may I hasten to say, you can be renting and you are ordered out of that property, that rented property, but can continue paying the rent, ordered to continue. And if you fail, whatever the consequence that is stipulated at the end of the order can be meted out against you. But I want to say two things, Callis. One, John Public, Mr. or Miss Respondent, that's the abuser. If after that document was served on you, whether it's by the police or the court bailiff, the applicant, who happens to be your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your brother, your sister, your mommy, whoever, says to you, well, girl, come back home, or boy, pass by me, just ask them, please go back to the court and let the court know we sort it out. You don't need that anymore, because the order is against the respondent, not against the applicant. So if the respondent allows the applicant who went before the magistrate and applies for the order, law them, influence, encourage, advise, request for them to come back to the resident, which is the house or that rented property, and say we make up if anything happened there, or sometimes nothing at all happened. The fact that you return there, you breach the order, even if the applicant invited you. So what do? Ask the applicant to return to the court and discharge the order. But I want to advise parties that a protection order is not a weapon in relationships, because I've seen situations where the order or the instructions on the order, the applicant who go before the magistrate requesting also get a copy served on him or her, and it's within the judgment of the magistrate, or the court, put it like that. So you may ask, why or what's the importance of those information? It is important, Callis, because as I indicated at the start of the program, a lot of our clients, regardless of how much time we speak about domestic violence, still come forward and is in awe or shock when they are told you are going through domestic violence. The activities you are speaking about do lend itself to domestic violence. You are a victim. You are a survivor. And in some instances, we even have to say to her, which is the complainant at the time, you are the abuser and you need to seek help. So, the other thing that the law says that the police need to do on response of the scene of a domestic violence, if the applicant asks of the police to take them to a place of safety, the police ought to respond alike. So, if the applicant says to the police, Sergeant Grant, my husband is still outside. We don't know where he is because when he heard the van, he jumped through the kitchen door and he ran. But it's not the first time he has done something of that nature. I know he coming back as all your leave. I want to go by Tom Jones, but he should not know where I am going or where you are taking me. That is the applicant's rights, and the officer has to obey it. Same so, if the victim leaves the shared residence or their residence because of domestic violence and is relocated on their own request or action, or on the request or action of some entity, and this says in the protection order, I do not want the respondent to know where I am residing, that have to be upkept, that have to be granted, and that's the law. So, something I want to raise as to the rights of the victim. The victim has the right to medical attention. The law never says that the police is obligated to sit and wait with the victim for medical attention. The law never says that the police is obligated to take the victim to seek medical attention. So we would assist, having weighed the situation in the best interest of all parties. But many a times we speak to the victim. What if the perpetrator or the abuser also sustained injuries and is in need of medical care? We have not a choice to grant it. As nice as he may be or she may be, or as bad in local language as he or she may be, that need must be given attention and granted.
And as Reddy said, it's no longer male or female, but it's the person. So whichever party that suffer injury or both parties, the police has the right to ensure that these parties secure medical attention. We spoke a little bit about the protection order, but is it only the victim that can apply for a protection, or can someone apply on the behalf of a victim?
Yes, someone can apply on the behalf of a victim. If the victim is still a minor or child or children under the age of 18, a guardian or the parent, or one side of the parent, based on who is the abuser, can apply. If the victim is of a mental or unstable or in unstable mental condition, or if the victim is also an elderly person or has any condition that makes them incapable of doing it for themselves, yes, someone can do it on their behalf. Because bearing in mind, you're not just going to say what you want, because there is a part on the form where you have to
Declaration.
right. I would not have used declaration. I would have said quote unquote where you had to swear, where you had to say that the information that you put in there is true and correct. So that means when you do that in front of the JP or the registrar or even that of a magistrate, and you intentionally tell untruth or lie, you can be prosecuted. So that's the point I wanted to make in light of who can apply or can you apply on behalf of.
Wonderful. We are winding down with the program this morning, the conversation with the RGPF, and as I always say, once we start get rolling, the time flies by so quickly. Is there any final comments that you want to say to encourage persons who are victims or maybe even perpetrators as relates to domestic violence?
Well, of course, one, speak up. Don't be silent. Seek help. There are plenty and numerous for help. Gone was the days where shame is the game. But how can we save our community and our environment? When you go to the police, ensure you know the name and number of the officer you communicated with so that a follow-through or follow-up or necessary follow-up can be done. If you may permit me, in light of closing remarks, just to stray away from the actual topic, but on behalf of the Victoria School for Special Education, in collaboration with the Kingdom Workers, they present a World Down Syndrome Day and World Down Syndrome and Fun Day, March 21st, Alston George Park, Victoria, and that is for the entire day between the hours of 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Some of the activities that they intend to have is bouncing castle, face painting, sensory games, water slides, eats and drinks will be on sale. And I want to ask all, even if you are virtually queue in this morning, but if you can make some contribution, because we have seen how these children have been coming into and how they have been performing within education sector and otherwise. So whatever we can do for them, let us continue to give off and support them one way or the other. Don't forget, March 21st at Victoria Alston George Park for the entire day, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Go on and have clean and healthy fun with them.
Wonderful. And just as a bit of notice or information as well, the RGPF is presently in a recruitment phase. So persons who are interested in joining the RGPF, now is your time. And we do encourage females to get on board.
Of course.
Yes, we do encourage that, right? And there's a lot of areas. You have diving, person with auto mechanic skills, welding, plumbing, electrical skills, air conditioning. If you are in those specific fields and you want to be a part of an excellent team within the RGPF, now is your time to join. So I want to take this opportunity again, Sergeant Grant, to thank you for being here with us on the program this morning, the conversation with the RGPF, and all those who are faithfully listening to the program every Wednesday here at Real 91.9 and 91.5. We thank you. And those who join us this morning via the program on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for joining us, and do have a wonderful Wednesday. And we're going to be back in studios with you next Wednesday, God's will, for another program, The Conversation with the RGPF. And I was your host for today's program, Constable Tusi Scalis of the Community Relations Department. Do have a wonderful day. God bless you.
Care and the experience we have gained over the years. Why do you even contemplate using substandard furniture, which is imported, when you can get the best made right here in Grenada? Our factory is located in the cultural village of Chantimel and our showroom on Ben Jones Street, St. Andrew. We are also noted for refurbishing that piece of furniture to its initial look. When looking for quality furniture